Wonderful. We have still some spots here at the front if you want to come and sit down, because we are about to start. So if you're here for a discussion about cities, future cities, and civic participation, and how people can get involved in creating cities, and technology, design, and innovation, then you're in the right place. And find a spot, because we have 5 wonderful experts, participants, super clever people here, everyone in their own field and expertise, and we will see what they have to say. My name is Madara Ūlande. I'm the director of Social Entrepreneurship Association in Latvia. And social enterprise is something I work with on a daily basis. But today I have the honor to somehow lead this conversation through all the mazes regarding cities. And I will try to tie it together in a meaningful and fun and interesting way. And thank you guys for being here. And hopefully, if you have some questions during our talk, or if you have some things to add, just hold on to them, because we will have space for that at the end of the talk. But okay, great. Are you guys ready? Yeah? Okay, we have another mic over there. Great, so you will use that, and I will also try to pass this on. Okay, so cities. Let's start with you guys and see who lives in a city. Can you raise hands? Who lives in a city? Okay, most of you. And who lives outside of the city? Okay, great. Great. Good to have you guys here as well. And who of you feels like that you, in some way, are creating the city in one or another way? Yeah, who of you feels like that you are part of creating a city where you live? Great. Some of you as well. Good. Maybe we will do the same question and sort of the say questionnaire or yeah, just to see at the end of the talk, just to see if some of the thoughts have changed. Great. But so let's start with who we have here, and I will very quickly introduce you guys, and then if you have something to add, then you can just rip the mic out of my hand and just to scream out whatever you want to add. So on my left we have Jāzeps Bikše, and for you guys who have heard about Free Riga, have you heard about Free Riga? So Jāzeps is one of the people who runs the Free Riga project, and he has been involved in other civic activism projects and civic society organization, and I think he's a very active and smart guy who knows how to use this people energy in order to make things better around us. So we're glad to have Jāzeps here. We have Barbara Ābele, who is a professor, design professor, right? Design professor in the Art Academy of Latvia. And Barbara has worked with many design projects and works with students on daily basis, basically, right? Mostly with students, and also works with different design strategy and international projects connected with design. So she has vast experience in that. So thank you, Barbara, for being with us. We have great. We have some materials to show as well. We have Gunita Kuļikovska, who is a co-founder of Vividly. And would you call it an app or a startup, or what is it? Yeah, it's a platform. It's a platform for digitally experiencing architecture before it's even built, right? Or before it's even there. So and some people say that she's one of the most inspiring women in architecture these days. So if you want to know more about that, make sure you catch her after this talk. We have Alastair Parvin. Who heard Alastair's talk just now before we came here? Great. Did you like it, guys? Who liked it? Yeah, I did. So Alastair is an architect and designer and one of the co-founders of WikiHouse project. Make sure you Google it afterwards. It's super cool and interesting thing about how we can basically print our own houses or cut out the parts to build our own houses. So that's something I've never seen in Latvia so far. So someone should do it here. And Alastair also works with other innovation and design and citizen-led city building projects, and I'm sure you will tell some of your stories during this talk as well, right? And we have Gvido Princis, who is the chief architect of Riga City, right? And also one of the people who is part of making decisions for Riga City or helping other people to make decisions for the city. So hopefully you can help us to maybe grasp this political reality, or at least the city council reality, and how you see things. Okay, so 5 amazing people, and my first question to you guys is we heard in Alastair's talk that citizens as this force sector, this driving force behind basically building or creating everything we have around us. How do you have seen or experienced in your professional life how people can be part of creating cities, creating future cities in a meaningful and also practical and useful way? What is your view on that, and maybe how you see technology and design and innovation can help this process to get people involved in city building process? Who wants to start? I know it's a very big question, right? Okay, scary question, huh? Yeah, there's a mic there. Yeah, very good.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Yeah.
Okay. It's pretty strange at this time of day have such a serious discussion at the table. But anyway, thanks for inviting, and it's really a topic you touched upon, and being a city architect today, it's rather different from previous periods. Today, city architect, me and my small office, we don't really produce any projects. We don't really resign or accept any projects. So we are like more like advisors between many stakeholders involved in Riga city development. So we are in between. We try to keep an eye on what's going on, and different things coming in, like innovation, technologies and design in city development, and we're trying to capture what's going on and try to advise those things to come to Riga. And as we already understood that public participation and in creation of our city is really a topic around the globe, in Europe and metropoles around Europe, and in cities around Baltic Sea as well. So our City Architect's Office drew attention to this question last year. We had a conference here in Riga, and the theme of conference was like more dedicated to the theme of empowering citizens. All presentations in 2 languages, Latvian and English, in video versions available on our website, so everyone can go and listen and learn and comment on these themes. But we covered such questions in this conference, like we more or less understand that public participation is crucial to get some projects done well. But really a few people know the answer to questions such as who, in which cases, and to what extent has to be involved in those discussions. This is really important because we have some procedures working in development, both planning and construction, and we see that in many cases those procedures just don't work. So they just don't reach people on ground, and they just provide ideas to come and to improve projects. And we have many bad samples around the city. We explored two good practices from social activism in Riga. We looked at the idea behind the festival Komēta and its realization in Daugavgrības fortress, as well as we analyzed Sarkandaugavas neighborhood's experience engaging youth in city shaping, in city life. We have had students from Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts, Architecture, presenting their views from the outside of Riga, but talking about Riga neighborhoods, possible development in some contexts which are already been pointed out, but I will cover some of them. I will mention some of them. So we have aging population, we have shrinking city, we have energy efficiency problems, and we have empty buildings in Riga. So all those topics are really important for citizens, and we have had concepts and ideas how to deal with those issues in Riga case.
Okay, can I just stop you?
I will sum up in 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay. And in first block we had we really stressed out communication of ideas as a super essential tool in order to convince citizens about the aim for chosen solutions. So communication is important. So to sum up my conclusions in context of this discussion, I would say that, for example, in Riga we have knowledge, we have experts, we have ideas, we have concepts, we have softwares new coming in, and everything is there. So even if not in Riga, it's available not far away. So we have all of them here. But to be honest, I think on the other hand, we have it's not enough. We miss really resources, knowledge, understanding of how to use all those tools, how to implement those ideas, how to start implementing those new concepts, and how to improve our daily citizens' lives. So that's what we're missing. I'm really looking forward for guys here for some ideas, for new inspiration to somehow use in our future work. So.
Okay, so what I hear Gvido just said is that Riga City Council is paying attention to how get people involved in what you guys are doing, and also how to solve this problem. And you would like to hear some maybe new ideas or to get some new know-how on actually how to get people involved and how to create this process and get it going, and how to get those ideas from people to actually and put them in practice. Is that right, more or less?
As I mentioned, we have ideas, we have knowledge, we have theory, and we have tools. It's more important for broader public to come in, to engage, to analyze what we propose, to see if it would work, if it would work in our case, in Riga case, because we have really a few good samples of practicing it. So we are lacking practice. We moderate, we discuss, we do some things virtual, but we have too much practical good samples on ground, let's say.
Okay,
so.
guys, for the rest of you, so there's a chief architect for Riga saying that Riga is open and ready for people to get involved and to actually help them to create this city and make it a better place. So what is the first response, or maybe first ideas, or first things that come to your mind when you hear something like this, and maybe how you could, from your own experience and from your own professional background, what do you see as the best way how to go to them and help them to create this city? Jāzep, what about you?
I think it was very interesting, your first part of small office, working with some ideas and mediating people. At first it sounded a lot like me in my small office. People come in, out, someone wants to make something, we help. And I'm thinking that maybe it's just a bunch of us are mirrors or some sort of mediators between these processes. And all right, but that's an endless loop. Yes, well, maybe reflecting on what was said before and somehow on Riga, my slight comment, I think from our experience, I mean, I'm working in temporary use projects, buildings which are run down, and no one really wants to invest in them, so a bunch of people who have nothing much to do in life, or who have very great things to do in life, to go there and use the sort of vacuum provided. And I think, I mean, we work very much and we try to engage and invite people through Google Forms, through wikis, through all these sorts of platforms. And what I've noticed is that, I mean, this civic life is somehow not super active in Latvia. If you look in statistics, it's quite low in European level in these metrics. But at the same time, people in their inner yards, like my neighbor, for example, knows WikiHouse, and he builds his barn from this. And you know, you have these, everyone sits inside their sort of little fence, and the problem is that people don't go, maybe not even to their yard, that it's not sort of a public activity. The innovation is very internal. Yeah, and that's what we are a lot working with as well. Maybe someone has.
What about you, ladies? Barbara, you work with design students, and sometimes when we say design, the first thing that comes in our minds is just an object or how a thing looks. But actually, design is a much bigger word. And do you, with your students, do you also talk about design concepts or design as a way of doing things, and design as something that could be on a larger scale for a city? For example, how the traffic is arranged or how processes are run. Does that come up when you're in your design programs at all? And what are the students' responses to that? And what do they kind of like, in what way do they think about that?
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. That is what we are doing in our MA program, especially because students are coming from different backgrounds. They are not just design students. They are sometimes also social anthropologists or philosophers, and that is the right way how to put them together in one team to think about the city issues. And first of all, I think that we should take in consideration that we are so different, we who are living in the city, and there is a different reason why we are here. Some is coming for love, some for money, some for work, and etc. So city should be very inclusive in some way. And also we are so different in our passions and in our age. And we cannot talk about the homogenic citizen amount, certain amount of inhabitants, because we should take in consideration really the needs and actually interests of different social layers, if we can mention it in that way. But at the same time, city should be also very accessible for all range of people who are living in the city. Anyway, we are starting to hate each other, and actually it's very close from love to hate. How we can connect with our neighbors, even next door neighbors or neighbors in the same street. Actually, if we are thinking many centuries ago why people came together in the city, there was reason for co-creating, co-working, co-business making. And in nowadays we are much more consumers as people who like to communicate for new ideas. We are using much more technologies, what is very exciting, and we had wonderful stories today about it. But somehow we should establish again this in-between age connection, what we have in the cities, this human face of the city.
And okay, Jāzeps is very eager to comment.
Yeah, I'll try to sort of do it, discuss. Yeah, I think a very good point. I mean, yes, we sort of in this modernist planning, I think what is very often seen that you put young people sit in this room, older people this room, those people this room, and then you have these layers of problems which they solve. And there is no reason to come together to co-create some solutions. Yeah.
Or it hasn't been seen in that way before. And I guess in the planning we're also still sticking to the zoning and like addressable target groups and those kind of things. So we do the survey in like kind of localizing the groups that we are targeting. But I wanted to a little bit spice it up with sort of this digital aspect of the thing, and just a quick research came into my mind that proves that people who are more like digitally active or digitally connected, including all the possible new medias, relating themselves with a much more wider kind of a territorial sort of an aspect. So meaning that what I kind of just came into my mind is that probably there's a sort of a two scale of perception about the space. So the one that is like next door's your courtyard, or you know, something that you visually or even like physically can feel around. And the next layer is the one that is like this open source, sort of accessible from anywhere and wherever you would be in the world. So maybe that's something where we have to tackle a little bit more this digital and sort of technical solutions. And here, I guess, which regards the smart city, also called concept, that starts with the smart citizens, in my belief. But there's so much of like these big data abilities, artificial intelligence that calculates it on our behalf, and or persuasive sort of city impact. So meaning that technology in that wide context can actually initiate the participation or involvement on, let's say, you know, decreasing the CO level in the city by biking more. And with those persuasive city systems, we can sort of engage the inhabitants to take part in reaching those goals. You know, it's not like we're asking them on how you would, you know, decrease the CO2 emission in the city, but we kind of play a little bit in a playful mode in a way. And that is all kind of created by the gamification, by the big data behind it, then doing, you know, calculations that respond to the human interactions.
So what you're saying is that technology can actually help us to get people to be more active and more participatory and more interested in actually what is happening around them.
Maybe trigger that, because that medium is much wider, I guess, and maybe much easier, much kind of intuitive at this point when we speak about generation that, you know, kind of is moving the city forward at the moment. And I would say that another aspect is the young generation. I took a part in the project that took place in Helsinki, Riga, and Minsk, where we were working in this youth participation in urban planning. And I'd say that those aspects of digital mediums coming into the game are even more crucial. So for us, it's sometimes even we can't realize that, we can't really like figure out, you know, why it is happening like that. But for example, what we noticed within teenagers, so in particular we targeted teenagers. So we, as I know I can speak about like my age people or our generation, let's say, the physical communication for us is sort of a native. So we entered a new group of people and we want to introduce ourselves, or we want to get to know other people. For them, if they don't know the group that they're entering, they're just turning the back and like going away, because in the meantime, they have all their friends, their memories, their experiences, their emotional connections created by those digital mediums in there. And it's not something bad or good. It's something that within that reality that they are living. And it's true, like even myself, I can well, you know, I'm chatting with the people all around the world in the messenger. They're, in my kind of perception, they create memories and they create even emotional presence. And these new mediums, as well the virtual reality or whatever the immersive media, create even stronger feeling of the presence and kind of emotional attachment that creates the memories, which actually fulfill our need for that contact. So it's, so like, you know, you will always have a close network of physical connections again, but very wide a network of digital connections, which also fulfill you as a human being.
Yeah, wow, that was deep. We all need to just pause a little bit. But Alastair, I had a question for you. So we are all actually, we can all probably imagine our ideal city in our heads, and you were talking a lot about the future city and how it could look like. But how do you think, from your experience, how do we get people to actually step into the process of creating that future city instead of waiting for someone to create it for them?
And it's hard, right? Because we've been trained for the last 100 years to just to see it that way, and to, you know, and to believe that when you have a complaint, you complain to the government, right, or whatever. In a way, I'd like to flip your original question, which is, what is citizen-made? What is the citizen-made city? What we can say with certainty is what it's not. So what it's not is consultation, right? Which is, we do development to you. We're making a smart city that looks at you, etc. Oh, but if you want to, we'll consult you. We'll let you, which you say exactly right. It's rubbish, right? We'll let you choose the color of the brick you get hit around the head with, right? Because it changes nothing about the ultimate economics. And the only people who participate in consultation are people complaining. And usually it's people who've got the time, because most people have jobs, right? So that is not civic participation. It's, you know, you have a right to be consulted, whatever. But that is the kind of, throughout the 1990s and the 2000s, there was this myth that somehow that's what people meant by citizen participation in the creative city, was being asked by the developers what color you would like the overpriced real estate to be, right? That's not it. The thing that's half it is what I would call civic activism, or civic parts, so which is basically where in your free time you get together and you try and participate in making a neighborhood plan, or maybe make a community project work. Now that is a wonderful, wonderful thing, but most people don't have the time to do it, right? You know, and yes, we can lower those thresholds, right? And yes, we can lower the thresholds, and we need to. It's really, really important. But that's not it either. Like, the thing is, it's much more real than that. The citizen-made city is simply people making stuff for themselves. Then most of it is not done out of altruism. It's literally, so one way that, for example, Almere in the Netherlands have unlocked it is, say, instead of selling that land to a developer, we're going to divide the land up into plots, we're going to install infrastructure, and we will sell those plots directly to families with a design code, and they can develop for themselves, right? And so they can buy a plot at a reasonable rate, the rules are really clear, and they can develop for themselves. They get much more affordable housing, and they get better neighborhoods. So, and this is the interesting flip side, is that it's not just that the citizen-made city, where has it succeeded? In fact, it's the only form of city, in my view, that ever has succeeded. Because the neighborhoods that are made from the top down, whether they were made by communists or whether they're made by developers, they're not real neighborhoods. I always say this, a neighborhood built by one person is not a neighborhood. It's a facsimile of a neighborhood. Right? A neighborhood is a place where people know each other and they look after each other's kids and they start businesses. and they trade, right? It's Jane Jacobs. I'm saying nothing new. So that's what, and if you actually look at cities and say, go to the executives who are working on these mass housing schemes and say, where do you live? Oh, I live in a lovely vernacular village, or I live in the old town, right? I live in the emergent bit. Go to the economists or go to your urban analytics people and say, where is the neighborhood which is your your thriving startup community? Oh, yeah, it wasn't the top-down city, right? The new build mass housing is just storage for humans. It's not a real city, right? And so the irony is that if you want your city to economically, socially, and culturally succeed and be resilient, it has to be made the Jane Jacobs way, not the Le Corbusier way, right? Like, it has to be made from the bottom up. And most of our cities were, and have always been the more successful bits of cities. And so there's something very paradoxical where, because we believe there's something wrong in the economics of it, if you like, but but
isn't there also this paradox that because what you just described, it's a dream, right? Like, everyone would love to see a city being developed like that, but in reality the city is waiting on citizens to take the first step and show the action, and then but the citizens are kind of like expecting the city to be that the one that will lead the vision. So
one of the things we were talking about before was all the empty properties in the city. So a city in Liverpool, I'm not saying the Brits have got this right, because by the way, the Brits, we're the worst at top-down centralised planning. But one really cool initiative that they did is, in Liverpool, they did the worst of both worlds. One of the things, which was the worst thing, they said, the only economic development model that works is when house prices are inflating. So let's demolish all the houses so there'll be an undersupply, and that will make prices inflate. In other words, the only way they could get developers to come was by making the houses more too affordable, right? And yet, paradoxically, you look back at the only thing that has ever made a thriving creative quarter. People love to talk about creative quarters. The only thing that has ever created one is old warehouses and cheap rents. And the first thing that happens is the artists move in. And the second thing that happens is the kind of creative industries move in. And then the estate agents move in, et cetera, et cetera. So you look in London, Shoreditch, Soho in New York, whatever, right? All those neighborhoods, West Village, they all began on that model of just space with cheap rents. Look at Berlin, right? Was a shrinking neighborhood. So another good example from Liverpool is what the city council did is they said, you can buy one of these houses for £1. But in exchange, you have to commit to renovating it yourself. Because speculative developers wouldn't do it because it's not profitable, but people will do it for themselves. But what they need to do is make it easy for them, make it legally easy, have the contract ready for them, make the building safe, put in place the local tools and the companies that they need to help them renovate it for themselves. That stuff doesn't cost that much, and then lease them these empty properties for a tiny amount of money. And before you'll know it, you'll find that young people are moving into your city because they're fed up with paying London rents.
What do you think? And then we'll give floor to Gvido as well. But you as citizens, but also from your professional point of view, are you more expecting the city will take the first step and kind of like the lead the way, or do you think that people should do it? And if people should do it, then how? Like, how can we? I know Jāzeps is already doing his share of work in this, but maybe do you have any thoughts on this?
I think that what we can refine from that is we need more of those initiations or platforms where people can meet, mingle, where those economical, social network ties are created, and then they are ready to kind of jump into to actually hands-on doing something. And I guess in a courtyard project, which was launched, I don't know, 2012 or something, when there was the 5 courtyards, which like we gave some money for them, and like citizens had to prove their ability to co-work and co-create together with young architects. And with little money, we understood that, you know, everyone from that courtyard, and it was focused in this social sort of residential areas, came down and put their hands on to the co-creating something. Because we created a reason why they actually talked about something more than just hello, bye, crossing the paths from, you know, in the doorway or staircase. Because of this architecture from Soviet times, it created the blocks for people not to talk. So we had to, you know, give them a reason why to talk about having a bench, having a garden, having an apple tree in the courtyard. So me personally, I've been taking part of those initiation or experimentations from my curiosity of what happens when you allow people to mingle, you know, whether it would be teenagers that go out of their, you know, comfort zone of like school space and interact with the citizens in the neighborhood, which is like, whoa, we can ask questions to, you know, those old ladies about what we should build, and saying them that you guys are not the decision makers, or like those teenagers don't have to take that decision, but they have to learn tools of how to crowdsource opinions and do things. Yeah. Shortly.
Barbara, did you have something to add?
I heard today also many opinions about consumerism, and you mentioned before this civic activism. Actually, it's something very like to civic rights as well, because if we are the citizens, so we cannot be just consumers and to insist to our rights that we need good heating, etc., and accessibility. Somehow we should to promote those activities by ourselves. Anyway, we are just saying, oh yes, it's good done, yeah, or oh no, it's bad done. But you never ordered like in restaurant in menu. You should to do by yourself. And as you said before about the strategies, so in Ministry of Culture we write a small ecosystem and strategy about design, and of course society or citizen is one very important part also for whole design ecosystem. And also in the city, it's I cannot imagine the city without citizens with their civic activity, and they should to insist.
Just a quick note on just from user experience design. When also in startups and companies, we put the human at the first place. So behind every company, there's a person, there's an architect. You know, there's not like architects in total. There's an architect who has his own personal interest in taking part. I think the same thing is about citizens. It's not like a bunch of people or the layer. It's human beings, so it's a human-centered design, and it has to come like, inside out, allow to target that human nature, of, I don't know, having your kid, growing up in this city, and most probably he will grow up in the city, how that it affects you. It's not about some participation methodology or, that you have a system in place, why don't you take part, It's because you don't feel like as a personally related to that. So again, maybe from the top, thinking of how we can facilitate the creation of those happenings, let's say, that address that human interest, Yeah.
Right.
May I say it was interesting that the thing you say about rights, right? Because we tend to get very caught up in your question of, is it top down or bottom up? Who leads the change? It's not both. And one of the things or it's not either, it's both, right? And one of the things we've learned from the web is that it's about a slight change in mindset, which is in the days of the city architects, when the city architect did everything because the state was all powerful, right? Then in a way it's less good than today. In a way, although part of us feels nostalgic for those days, in a way it was less good because now we realize that the government, the state, is a platform. It's the platform on which things run, and it defines the rules, basically. It defines the kind of rights that people have. And by creating the framework and the platform, the government creates the conditions on which then invites citizens or then invites companies to behave in a certain way. And so condition setting is one of the main roles and market making is really the main role of government, I would argue, in the 21st century. And it's interesting you say that about rights, because when I was first researching this, I wrote a publication which was called A Right to Build. And actually, we're now advocating for something else called... a right to build is now a government policy in the UK, but that's not because of us. Like, we were one part of a system, or of an argument. But the whole idea is saying, by giving citizens a right to build, it's a very different approach, a different mentality to the idea of providing everyone with a house. We're now actually campaigning for another thing called a right to replace, which is for the suburbs of London, because we have low-density suburbs. So we're talking about the government could institute a rule which would give citizens the right to knock down their home, replace it with a new home on half the site, paid for by selling the other half of the site to somebody else. So it's a way of densifying the suburbs, but also unlocking money. But finally, I'll shut up, I promise. When we talk about rights, rights come from two directions. Rights come partly from the state, that is the permission to do a thing. But as Amartya Sen argued in his, was it Development as Freedom, right? Rights are not just things, permissions created by the state. They are capabilities. And that's where digital innovation and other things and tools come in, because we can give people capabilities, and that's another way of building rights.
Gvido, how does all this that you just heard, how does that resonate with you? Or what are your maybe first thoughts or
It's
comments?
complicated. It's really complicated.
Is.
Yeah. I know that. But what I would like to say that is that I would not imagine that, for example, Riga, we have around 700 citizens, 700,000 citizens. So I would not imagine all those citizens would take their own decisions and make their own houses and make their own villages and things like that. At the same time, I would not agree with you that we have less or too less activism. Yeah, I think the key to initiate, to support that concept conceptually is creating this platform. In Riga, in Tallinn, in London, in wherever, this platform of having possibility, active people to come to city, to raise up their hands and to raise up some ideas and to implement them. That's, I think, the key to success. Of course, we will not have hundreds of thousands of citizens coming and doing something, but we need to support those first ones which are educated enough, brave enough, and take the decision, make some plans and stay in the city, which is not always the case in Riga. So I think that would be those first necessary steps for city institutions, non-governmental bodies and citizens would develop. So that would be my comment to this rather complicated situation where we are.
And would you say that Riga as a city is open to co-creating such kind of platform together with its citizens?
I would like very much city to be more open for that. And it's not only words, because I'm basically speaking, yeah, but it's, as I'm saying, it's about institutions. It's about capacity of institutions to receive new ideas, non-standard ideas, which does not fit in existing regulations, to think more out of box, to take some braver decisions or to change regulations which would allow new ideas to come in and to be implemented. So I think that's the challenge for both planners, decision makers and citizens for coming years.
All right, wow, lots of talking here. I would love to hear maybe some comments or questions from the audience. And how do you think, guys? Maybe someone has a story or an idea about how would you personally, would like to be involved in creating, for example, Riga or any other city? What are the areas that you would like to work on, or what are the changes that you would want to participate in creating? Are there any?
I see we have Lucavsalu inhabitants here with the
Is there anyone in the audience who would love to share an idea or a story about that?
May I ask a quick question of the audience? May I do a quick straw poll? If Riga city were to make available big apartments that are maybe in a dilapidated state for €1, and you could buy one for €1, hands up who would think about buying one?
Okay, if not ideas, does anyone have a question for anyone in our wonderful couch panel, or something that you would like to just to throw in the discussion? No. Okay. Wow.
I had a sort of a question direction.
Okay, go for it.
From NGO civic person direction. I mean, what I've read from other countries of these future open smart cities, how you deal with this is, and basically opening up information, opening up data which you hold or which you sort of pile up in thousands of archives. How is Architects Bureau dealing with this? Are you open or interested in this direction? Because I think that is one way which you can build some responsibility for citizens. I mean, if you have some understanding of what your neighborhood is or what your city is, and you see some challenges, let's say, we have CO2 problems or traffic or abandoned houses, then you can look at this information, you know, some specifics, and work with it. I mean, for us as an NGO, I mean, we are collecting our own data, trying to collect what we are interested in and then work with it. But if city would provide us, I mean, our NGO is working directly with space, but I know there are hundreds of different aspects of challenges city has. If you open it up in some seminar, workshop, or just, you know, website publishing, it's already a very long step. Yes, yeah, it's a very. I think that's a sort of a basic.
I'm not sure about which data you're talking about, but you mean environmental data about quality of our environment?
Different directions for you.
Okay.
It might be like quality of environment, challenges of neighborhoods. If I look into this, I can find, you know, criminality.
Yeah, I assume that direction, yeah. So we just recently, actually 1 year ago, we completed one research on Riga neighborhoods. We investigated 7, if I'm correct, 7 neighborhoods, and we gathered data about temperatures, about dust, about humidity, and noise in those neighborhoods. To be honest, we don't have such data at the moment. So we just took experiment and went around 7 neighborhoods, and we just for 1 week took data and understood that there's actually not as good environment as we all tend to think. And I'm absolutely agree with you. And as a result of this project, we came up with an idea that thanks to our technologies at the moment, we could easily put different sensors around the city and put screens and let people just know what the current situation is, what the temperatures are, what the situation about dust, noise situation, and noise and make people to let people make good decisions or choices to live or to move or to do whatever. That's one direction which city of course should work.
Did you sort of publish or engage citizens of these neighborhoods? This may be already too far, but yeah.
The result of this particular project is published on web. You can go and there's interviews with locals and data. So, but that's not like we are having. So we providing online data today. So we just had it for 2 weeks 2 years ago. So, but that's good and fair question, and that kind of data lies in the line what Gunita explained, this smart city concept, and that fits really well, and Riga should go for it, for sure.
All right, so we're slowly reaching the finishing line of our discussion. So at the end, I would like to ask each and every one of you, when you think about future cities, what is the thing, a particular thing that you would like to see in a city where you live now? Maybe for some it's Riga, for some it's other cities. But what is one particular thing you would love to see changed in the future? Jāzeps, we start with you. It can be small, it can be big, but just this one dream you have.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of this 100 other wishes. To have some only banal things come to mind. You know, being transparent and open within the communication of city to citizen, and I think that's sort of the unimaginably big hard challenge, as our discussion sort of points out. But yes, I think this is like opening up the city and making it available for citizens to truly make it.
Perhaps I hope for good neighborhoods with identity, that they are different, with a different inhabitant traditions or even customs or even stories. And I think and I believe also in common maker spaces, because that could be a nice way come together again, not medieval making together, but using technologies, but also skills that people can create and co-create by doing, not just by festivals, entertainments, and Friday night spendings, but really to do something together.
I know why, but the first thing that came into my mind is sort of in opposite of what I said, though, but sort of unplanned serendipity that could happen in the city. So some sort of randomness where actually the main role is the person that lives in the city. So being open and just running to me as an architect, running to the startups or tech people and just figure out, let's do something, you know, and that happens in that city on that ground level, with the sort of human interaction that turns into the value which from we gain and the city gains.
Can I have two? The first one's about the people and the second one's about the city. So the first one about the people, which I think is pertinent to our conversation, which is people, we have to break out of the habit of complaining to the government or complaining to somebody that they should be doing something different. Everybody is having a hard time right now, almost everywhere, right? There's a lot of big problems going on. And everybody, one of the diseases of the human mind is that we love to find somebody to bash over the head and then blame. And then when you blame them, you get in the room with them, you realize they're a perfectly decent person like you who's under a lot of pressure. So there's a lovely Bob Dylan quote, which is, people don't do what they believe, they do what's convenient and then repent later, right? So this is one of the reasons why I'm a designer and not a politician. Right? Which is, if you want change to happen, make it easy for them to do the thing you want them to do. Understand them, what's difficult. Don't bash the government round the head. Go to them and say, we understand you've got this problem and we've got this idea and we will do it, but we need you to do this one thing. So make it as easy as possible for them. That's the first thing. And I would love to live in a city where both on the public sector side, public sector think more like that, but also citizens and private sector think more like that. Solve the other person's problem if you want change. The second thing is a better actual answer to your question, which is about cities. And I'm going to get a bit economics wonky here. I would like us to be in a future in 10 or 15 years' time when we have disavowed ourselves of the absurd dependence on speculative real estate development to develop cities. Because the economics of it do not work, right? the idea of sitting there waiting for it and then saying, oh, we've got this capacity, but somehow having that capacity prevents this other. Trust me, you don't want that problem either. Go to London, right? It's horrific, where we've just got offshore money coming in and buying flats and keeping them empty, right? What we need to do is transition to a world where we recognize that our homes and our neighborhoods are primarily infrastructure. They're the day-to-day platform upon which the rest of our lives run out. And if we want good economic outcomes, and if we want good social outcomes, if we want to live in a healthy society, a happy society, a society where people look after each other and care for each other, they know their neighbors, then one of the best ways to do it is through housing, actually, and cities. Strangely, I always say the NHS should be investing in housing in the UK, right? So I would like us to be able to move to that economy where we, for example, instead of cities, public authorities being dependent on speculative developers saying, please come and build some houses, they say, no, we are going to empower the people to build good quality housing for themselves that will give, you know, long-term outcomes. And, you know, all the way across the board. And I would love to see people like pension funds and these kind of big, slow, patient capital investors saying, no, actually, we're going to invest in a project over 20%. And we see that happening with things like solar energy. We see people coming in, and so Solar City, for example, is a very smart business model because it's primarily a financial company. It's not about energy. It's actually saying, look, we'll pay for the capital cost of putting the solar panels in, and we'll just take a little share of the savings. Now, those savings are not just the private savings to the individual, they're also the public savings. So if you think of the cost that the public sector are going to have to pay on a neighborhood over 20 years, it's health costs, crime costs, all these care costs, all these other things. If we can invest preventatively to avoid those costs, then we've just created a new way to build cities. So that's my kind of wonky economic dream.
Not much to add. Yeah, my vision for next couple of coming years would be like, as you mentioned in your speech previously, is that we in Riga would more talk about, not about buildings, but quality of our life, not about space, but people, and not about infrastructure, but more about mobility. And me, myself, and our office will put every effort to move this discussion towards those good things which are in a top of the list why people live in the cities. So that's would be my vision. Thank you.
Great, thank you guys, and actually we are super close to the end, so thank you to all of you, and you guys, if you want to catch them by the hand and still ask a question eye to eye or say something, please do so, because they're probably going to be around at least for 5 minutes somewhere around here. But my thing that I will take away from this is that future cities, as every other thing is in our lives, are very much about building relationships and how we build relationships to each other, but also to spaces, to the city, the public officials or the public system, to private sector, and how these relationships shape afterwards how our life looks like. So that's something I wish to you guys as well. Pay attention to how you build your relationships, because that in future will build your city as well. So thank you, round of applause, and see you somewhere around.